I just want to explain a couple more of the federal debt deficit and spending, or the two we did in class that are due tomorrow. Those questions. I'm just gonna. I got cut off in class, and I just want to re-explain a couple of those. So I'm gonna hide my fat head and do that now. Probably go over to the board. So one of the questions that you're answering is based on. Remember in the form, you answered questions about the about number two, and that was a little bit of a tedious process. And but the main thing to look at is what generalization can make about the debt in U.S. history. So we said, well, during periods of major wars and other major events, it goes, the debt as a percentage of GDP goes up. Okay, we made that determination, right? Civil War, World War II, Great Depression, and then World War I and World War II. Look at World War II. It's because it was coming off the Depression, and the gross domestic product, the total of all the the goods and services sold came down a little as a percentage. This is kind of an important number because this is our ability to pay it back, right? But then it's going to continue to climb upward. It's gone up during periods of of war and other recessions or depressions, like during the early '90s, another depression there. But now it's on a continued. Now the trend is that it's on a continued upward climb. So that's number three, the generalization that you can make about public debt in U.S. history, and it's continued to be high. Now, to answer, I want to look at one more here. If I can get my pen to cooperate, I want to look at the question that was talked about with this, based on a Keynesian economist who basically says it's good to pump money into the United States. Long-term outlook has improved significantly since 2010, but remaining challenges by Richard Kogan, Paul N. Vandewater, and Chloe Chow. Policymakers should not ignore the long-run budget problems, which have remained challenging. No crisis looms, however, and promoting further labor market improvements and reversing growing inequality remains the nation's most immediate economic concern. So in other words, what they're saying here is, just to interpret this, is income inequality is what they're referring to. Okay, income inequality. That's what we're referring to here. Okay, and it should remain the nation's most immediate economic concern. Policymakers should therefore too much deficit reduction, which could unnecessarily slow the economy. So the question then is, deficit reduction usually requires a reduction in government spending. Explain why this could worsen economic inequality. I want you to think about the programs. That's what we need to do. Think about the programs. So let's go back up to another document here. Let's go back up to, when you think about number two in that document, think about trying to get it back, slowly getting it back. I want to go back to this one. The spending and the deficit. Remember, you did something on that sheet, talked about the deficit of $600 billion in spending as an example of one from a recent year. Now, you notice the mandatory, that's the money they have to spend. But discretionary is the money Congress can make decisions on. So things like education and security and transportation, and things like COVID relief, and things like unemployment insurance, and things like that are spending like that is what is done at a discretionary level. And even on a mandatory level, you need the spending because it helps to spur economic growth. Programs that help to spur economic growth, like, you could say like forgiving student loan debt or other things. So these programs that help, or incentives to, the incentives to build and construct highways and stuff like that. Things like, the Reinvestment Recovery Act, stimulus programs like that spur the economy. So they're needed. They're needed. And so what their argument is, what the argument is for this is that the argument for deficit spending, writing that deficit that I just talked about, that I just showed you, and it's under document F. The argument is that if you got rid of those types of programs, like programs that help the needy, programs that like programs that help stimulate the economy, it would have a disproportionate effect on poor people. It would basically have a disproportionate effect on poor people, and that would not be. And so the argument from these people is that the debt and the money you're paying on the debt and the growing debt is far less adverse than growing income inequality in the United States.